talk to me about transport in the north. Why is this such a hotly contested issue?
It's 10 years this year since George Osborne came here and said, we're going to build a northern powerhouse. You're going to have HS2, HS3 as it was called then, which is a new east-west line across the north. Better trains every day, and how much of that has come true? Pretty much none of it. So, here we are 10 years on, and it's just not right that people in the north of England have to put up with what they have to put up with every single day. We should have a modern railway system that's of an equivalent standard to London and the South East, and until we get it, I'm afraid I'm going to be like a stuck record on this theme.
It's not just trains though, of course, obviously buses as well. I know that's been a big focal point for yourself. Do you want to talk to me a little bit about buses?
Yeah, well, Greater Manchester is the first place in England to put buses back under public control, and already 4 months into the B network, we can show that the regulated services we've now got are better than the deregulated services they replaced. And in March, we will take the B network to Rochdale and Oldham, so it builds out into its second phase. And then by January next year, we will have a London-style system, tap in, tap out, over bike, bus and tram. So they'll all be integrated in a single system. So we are working really hard to improve transport in Greater Manchester, but sometimes it's the rail industry that are holding us back and undermining our progress. And what I'm saying today here is we need a plan to put trains under local public control as well as buses and trams so that we can build it all into a single London-style system.
Let's circle back to HS2. Obviously that essentially fell apart. What do the government need to be doing now to replace that?
I mean, it's so frustrating for us, as I say, because the government promised it to us all of those years ago. And the way they did it last year, in Manchester for their conference, wouldn't even talk to us, sitting yards away in a hotel, but just wouldn't even have the conversation with us, and then just standing up and cancelling it. I don't think that's the way things should be done in this country. And we need to do something, if you like, coming out of it. At the moment, I think we've got a Birmingham to Manchester hole in the transport plan for the country, because the West Coast Main Line is at capacity, it can't take any more. The M6 motorway is at capacity, it can't take any more. So how are we going to ensure that transport across the UK works if this kind of crucial corridor up the western half of the country isn't functioning properly? So it's why myself and the Mayor of the West Midlands, Andy Street, are developing a plan for better rail capacity between Birmingham and Manchester. We met the Secretary of State last week, and it was constructive discussion we had with him. But we're going to have to come to an agreement. There has to be a solution. Otherwise, we're looking at a century of rail chaos continuing, because, quite frankly, there isn't enough capacity now, never mind when HS2 finally opens between London and Birmingham.
Last question. We hear the words levelling up bandied about so often. We've even got a government minister for it. Do you trust this government to level up the north?
Well, no, on the back of our experience. As I say, it's a full decade now since George Osborne started what we now call levelling up by promising a northern powerhouse. Rail services have gone backwards in that time. They are worse today than they were back then. And that's proof, isn't it, that this was sort of more sloganeering rather than actually putting in place plans to improve life here. So I think we're entitled to be sceptical of the government's promises. What I would like to move to is the German system, where they have a law in their constitution that there must be equivalent living standards in all parts of Germany. We need a UK equivalent of the same, a law, not so that levelling up can just be promises and never delivered. There should be a requirement on government ministers to work to ensure that people in the north of England have the same level of infrastructure as people have elsewhere. Otherwise, how can we sort of all live in the same country? Because we don't, do we? Some people have better infrastructure than others, and it's always going to build this kind of sense of resentment that we're not being treated fairly. So we need big change, actually, and that's the message that I'm giving out here today. We can't continue to see the railway going backwards in the next decade like we've just seen in the last.